Hello, everyone. It's Heather Holmes with KTVU here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And today we're going to be talking about moral injury when it comes to those frontline workers who are on the front lines during this pandemic. And I want to bring in Rita Nakashima. She is with the Shea Moral Injury Center at Volunteers for America. Rita, thanks for being here. And H.C. Palmer, a battalion surgeon during Vietnam, and writes extensively about this issue. Thank you both for being here. Rita, I want to start with you. Explain to people at home what moral injury is.
It's what happens to your sense of your own self and your relationships when you do something or something happens to you that shakes your confidence in your own values down to the core. So it's often in high stakes situations where something terrible happens and you can't make sense of it, or you're angry about things that happened, and you can start to just feel like you're not a good person, lose your trust in and faith in other people, or feel profound shame.
And is this something that we typically see in the military?
It's often something that emerges for people. It doesn't necessarily happen in combat, but it's often in a situation like combat where they may feel like an officer sent them on a suicide mission and didn't care about them, and they may be furious about that and not trust their military values about obeying orders and doing the right thing anymore, or they may themselves do something that's within the rules of warfare, like killing someone, and then get a medal or feel good about it, and then leave the military and later on start wondering what kind of decent human being feels good about killing someone. And so it's not always right in the middle of it or right after, but your conscience gets at you sometimes. And I actually believe that we're all born moral. So when something crosses that moral line in a huge way, it wrecks us pretty deeply.
So why are we talking about this right now while we're all facing this pandemic? How does this come into play with frontline workers?
Oh, well, I think it comes into play in a number of ways. Some of them are being asked to do very risky jobs, and then had their pay cut, or people stop paying them. And so they expected to be paid at least what they were getting before. And this has happened to medical personnel. I've been reading stories about that. Or you go to a job and then they don't give you the right protective things. They act like they don't care about you and your fate in this terrible process because you're taking risks and it's dangerous work. So those are two things. One of the things, and I think HC can talk more to the issue of betrayal, but one of the other things I thought about the first time I read a story about Italy, where doctors there were having to do triage work. They had too many cases. They couldn't treat them all. They were overwhelmed, and they had to actually decide who would live and who they would work on to try to save. And I immediately reached out to HC because of his Vietnam experience. It sounded to me like it was like warfare. It was like a battlefield situation.
And HC, can I bring you in and get your thoughts on that? Is that an accurate comparison?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, this is my opinion from what I read, but the physicians on the front lines in the hospitals in New York aren't much different than we were in Vietnam. And I was also taking care of wounded people and zipping up dead people in body bags when I was there. So, but I think in both situations, we didn't have all the weapons we needed. For instance, now they don't have the personal protective wear that they need. They don't have enough ventilators, and probably the thing that, and they don't have enough beds. They're making that up. Probably the thing that caught me the most. I read the New England Journal of Medicine. I still take that. I'm an internist, so I understand what's going on in the ICU. And I read that in New York, there's a standard way to triage people, an algorithm that when they have everybody using, all the ventilators are being used, and they bring a new patient in that needs to be on it, that they figure by some algorithm may have a better chance to survive than one of the worst patients that's already on a ventilator. A committee will come to the doctor and nurses that are taking care of that patient and say, you must take this patient from this ventilator. And of course, he will die in 5 or 10 minutes. Now, they don't make the doctor do that. They will come in and do that themselves. And that's in an article in the New England Journal of Medicine on the 26th of March, if somebody would like to look that up. But those doctors and nurses and caretakers have to have severe moral injury. There's somebody they worked on maybe 10 days or 2 weeks. They take that ventilator out. Somebody comes in and says, you have to leave. I'm going to take the ventilator out. And then the patient's going to die. So they've been working long hours, seeing this patient, know the family by talking on the phone or maybe outside the hospital. And so to me, that would be the most terrible thing that I would have to do as a physician.
Mm-hmm. And Rita, when you hear of cases like that, what can be done? Because this is the situation that we're in.
Yeah, and it's really difficult because the pace is relentless. You're dealing with a kind of unseen enemy, because you don't know how you might get it, and you can't see the virus, so you don't know, and you're dealing with a system that's on overload. So I think one of the things that's helpful is to give people even a few minutes when those kind of things happen, those devastating things, when they lose somebody or they have to take someone off a ventilator, to give the healthcare team just a minute or two of just silence and time to take it in. Because one of the things that happens with moral injury is that you lose touch with your inner self. You're so busy doing other things that you're not paying attention to the grief or the inner voice inside you. And if you lose touch with that, it's really hard to recover from moral injury. So giving people just a little bit of time, some people take it, they'll go hide in a closet or go to the bathroom and do it. But I think it's even more helpful when the whole team has it together. And they might even want to, if they're religious, say a prayer for the dead person and themselves, and then move on. But that little moment of what I would call grace in the process of horror, it can make a difference between whether somebody survives that process intact or starts to fall apart because the moral injuries just starts to destroy their soul.
And HC, I'm guessing that is something that can in fact happen. I mean, this has lasting effects.
Well, I think many times it gets worse and worse and worse as time goes on. You know, I told you I work with a veteran writers group here in Kansas City, and these guys and myself included, I have written stories that we've never told before, that we were ashamed of. You know, I know a writer who wrote about a guy he ambushed and killed, a North Vietnamese soldier who was by himself for some reason, shot him. Nobody was around, went out and looked. Went through his pockets and found his wallet in his shirt pocket with pictures of his wife and 2 kids, and also that he was enrolled in a university in North Vietnam. So this guy had come from college to go to the war, so how could he not compare himself with that person? I think one more thing is people that don't have what they need, and I remember we got the first M16s in Vietnam when I was over there in 1965. About 10% of them didn't work. So these guys are getting in firefights and their guns jam, and guess what? They get killed with their weapons in their hands. And that's betrayal. I mean, no way you can't cut that anyway, but say that's betrayal, and they interpret it that way. And when you feel betrayed, you can get very angry. You know, you can get angry like Achilles did, you know, and Homer wrote about that. Or you can get angry and start drinking and just withdraw, or you can just be a mean son of a gun, you know, but you won't be able to function. And Rita is the expert on how to handle, how people can handle this betrayal syndrome. And I know when I go to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall, and Rita and I are doing a piece now, and there's something about that in there, that when I see all those names there in a war that I don't think was a just war, I feel like they were all betrayed. I feel like all those lives were wasted. But I love that place. I can't. It's haunting. I go there. I must stay, and I cry every time I go.
Yeah.
Rita,
Actually, my own father served as a medic in Vietnam. And I also feel, I wouldn't say I have a serious case of moral injury about it, but I was furious at my own government for sending my father into a war that I believed was wrong and unnecessary, and then was just a disaster at the end. And then the people who prosecuted the war later admitted they thought it was a bad idea and it was an unwinnable war. And there's ways in which I find it hard to forgive my government for having done that to my family.
so let's bring it back to the issue at hand, which is this pandemic. And my final questions for both of you. For those frontline workers who are continuing to go to work to keep all of us safe and healthy and to save lives, your advice, Rita, for these coming weeks and once this is finally over and sort of having a moment to process what they've been going through.
Well, I think in order to process moral injury, you actually have to have other people you trust that may have shared that experience with you, or at least understand the culture and the responsibilities and systems that you were in, and can listen without judgment, without opinions, without questions, to just help you express the pain you're in, and share it so that you can begin to process it. Because if you can't connect with other people and trust them enough to process the pain, you will just carry it the rest of your life.
And HC, I'm guessing that sort of this acknowledgement is really, really important.
Yes, I think the groups, call it therapy or call it talking, whatever. Just like my writers group, once those people work together, they're operating without all the equipment they need. They obviously don't have enough ventilators, and to me. Just sitting and talking, even with one person. I have a friend, his picture's on the wall right behind me here, who's a terrific writer. Rena knows about him. And he and I get together 2 or 3 times a year, and we'll stay 3 or 4 days together in his place in Arizona. And just the two of us, and we talk. And we talk half the time about the war in Vietnam. And we accuse each other of being more angry than the other about being in the war and being sent there. But it helps. We haven't punched anybody in the face yet. We haven't. We function. We both function. He's a retired dermatologist. I'm a retired internist, and we made it through. And I won't say I'm not saying I'm sorry I went to Vietnam. I'm glad I went to Vietnam. I learned more there than I would have learned at any other time of my life, and it's changed me terrifically. It made me more sensitive, and made me find something I really probably wanted to do all my life, which is right.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and I think that the thing that really is important to remember about moral injury is an experience as devastating as a moral injury experience isn't something you're going to forget or get over. It's something that you learn to live with, so the pain doesn't drive your life, but it informs your life, and that can be a positive thing.
All right. Well, really appreciate you both taking the time to talk with us. Hopefully this will in fact be beneficial to those frontline workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Be with you. Yeah.
Thank you.